All right, so today we're going to talk about dismissive avoidance. Now, dismissive avoidance can many times come off as a narcissist, but they're not. They've got some tendencies, some symptoms, but it's for different reasons. So this video is going to be in 4 parts. The first part, I'm going to be going over a video that is from a woman named Natalia Christensen, I believe. I put the link to her video in the description. She's got a video that's very, very good at explaining dismissive avoidance. So the first part of the video, I'm going to go over that. Then I'm going to give you some ways that you can recognize a dismissive avoidant before you get into a relationship. I'm going to give you some tools that you can use, some ways to cope, so to speak, if you already find yourself in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant. And then lastly, I'll give you some of what to expect post-relationship. Usually the dismissive will be the one that ends the relationship and might leave you sort of confused as to what happened. So I will give you some tips that way. So first things first, I'm going to play some clips from Natalia, and then we'll get into that.
Dismissive avoidants often lie or hide the truth, and they don't necessarily do this with malintent. For many, it's just a coping mechanism. The dismissive avoidant has low emotional intelligence. They're not very comfortable with vulnerability. They don't like intimacy, and they have a high need for independence. They can often be quite difficult to be in relationships with because of their lack of sensitivity and maybe even empathy sometimes. They're very consumed with their own world, and that they like to deal with problems by themselves. They don't often reach out. This is, of course, a product of childhood trauma.
All right, so this first part is basically the most important thing. To make a long story short and to oversimplify what may have happened to this person, some point in their childhood, could be young, 5, 6 years old, could be teenage years, just depends. But at some point, it's likely that they showed a part of themselves to somebody that was, their parents, a teacher, older sibling. They either showed a part of themselves that was rejected by their parent, etc., or they ended up getting in a lot of trouble for telling the truth about something. They did something, they told mom and dad, or they told the big brother, or whoever it might be, someone who that they would interpret as being in a position of authority over them. So they either did something and told the truth about it and got into way more trouble than they think they should have, or they showed a part of themselves to somebody and it was not accepted. And what happens is they then, at that young age, they associated telling the truth or revealing things about themselves with getting into trouble and being rejected. And they never healed the wound. And unfortunately, whatever stage that they are in, whatever age they are, they've likely gone through relationship after relationship, adding to that wound because they've never really healed from that one episode. So every intimate relationship that they get into, whether it be a friendship, relationship, still with their parents or whatever, when it comes time to reveal themselves or be intimate or tell the truth, they won't. And it will eventually end to the end of the relationship. So it's important to recognize that they're doing this to protect themselves. And this is the biggest difference between them and maybe a narcissist. A narcissist might be doing it on purpose, right? Where a dismissive avoidant is doing it to protect themselves. And in a weird way that they will admit that they're doing it, but won't fix the problem. We'll get into that more later. Here's more from Natalia.
A dismissive avoidant has a fear of intimacy, a true fear of intimacy, because they connect intimacy with danger, with something that's unsafe, because that's how it was for them earlier in their life. So opening up to someone, being vulnerable to someone, showing someone their true self is not something that they're very comfortable with. So they're going to try to avoid that at all cost. And as you could probably guess, that means that they'll have to hide the truth of who they are often. Sometimes dismissive avoidants can even come off as people pleasers, or like the good guy who's just happy with every choice you make because they don't really want to show you their true colors, what they really like, what they really want to do, because that's vulnerability. Because if they show that, then they can feel rejection from you. It feels too risky. So they just choose to hide parts of themselves. They choose to maybe even outright lie to you sometimes about their preferences.
So these two things really kind of go together, the fear of intimacy and the fear of rejection. Now, unfortunately for the dismissive, they have a fear of what they want the most. They want more than anything to have a deep, intimate connection. And when you meet them, that might be one of the first things that they tell you, one of the first things that they express. But having not healed that childhood wound, they are just destined to repeat the same patterns over and over again. And as we all know, life will continue to present us with opportunities to change our behavior. So it's unfortunate because they do have a deep desire for intimacy, but it's almost as though the more that they want it, the more that they exhibit the dismissive avoidant behavior. In terms of the fear of rejection, that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing here, where you will definitely hear, well, I didn't ask for this because I figured you'd tell me no. The dismissive avoidant operates from a default position of you, if you are the person in a relationship with them. They operate from the default position of you're going to tell them no. You're going to tell them you did something wrong. You don't really love them or like them as much as you say. They operate from a default negative position that they developed from that childhood wound that's never healed. So they have this massive fear of rejection, which unfortunately leads them to hide things from you or not bring things to your attention that you would have gladly accepted, said, yes, let's do this. Let's go, let's do this. And then it is almost as though that they interpret your lack of reaction as rejection anyway. They just assume that, well, I'm not going to tell him that because she's just going to tell me no anyway. You see what I mean? And then they just go around, they base all of the rest of their opinions on the thought that they had that you would have said no anyway. Meanwhile, you as the person in the relationship have no idea. You have no idea that the situation even exists. You have no idea that there was even a question that they wanted to ask you. But they are so fearful of the rejection that they won't ask, and they will just assume that you would say no, and then they will treat you and act as if you already said no to a situation you had no idea existed.
Avoidants also have a big desire for independence. So for them, it's very scary getting into a relationship because in a relationship, you do to some extent have to become at least a little bit dependent on your partner in order to be co-parenting and in order to be just sharing the rent in a house or buying a house together and whatnot. You have to be able to cooperate with people. You have to be, again, it's a bit of vulnerability, but they really don't like that. They really value freedom. So for them, it can almost be a way to prove to themselves that they still have the freedom and that they still have the independence, the fact that they are not sharing their whole life and all of their thoughts with their partner. It's like some of this is just for them. Okay, so maybe whenever they go on a trip, they behave completely differently. They go to a casino or whatever, and they won't tell their spouse. And it's a way for them to feel, I'm still my own person. I'm still independent. I'm not constantly being enmeshed and surveilled by my partner. I can have my own private things. And to some extent, it's okay. I think all people are entitled to privacy in a relationship as long as the things that are being hidden aren't damaging to the relationship or outright betrayals.
Yes, the need for independence. The need for independence for a dismissive avoidant will supersede any need for just basic honesty. I've told this story before. I'm going to tell it again real quick. It's an imaginary story, but it goes something like this. let's say I'm in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant. Once a month, she goes over to her sister's house for game night. So she leaves, she goes over for game night. The sister texts me after she leaves and says, hey, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to cancel game night. I say, okay, all right. She texts the girlfriend, says, I'm canceling game night. So, okay, all right. Girlfriend doesn't tell me that game night's canceled. She decides she wants to do something for herself anyway, so she just goes to a movie by herself. At this point, she hasn't done anything wrong. She hasn't told me she went to a movie because she wants to remain independent, but she hasn't done anything wrong. Then when she gets home, she tells me the story of how great game night was and how there were new people. She'll have a whole story about how awesome game night was, not knowing that I already know game night never existed. So she's making up a story and lying about something that is so stupid and so silly to hide, but it breeds distrust. And that's where the hard part comes in, because if she's just easily going to walk in the door and make up a story about a game night that never happened, and you have to sit there and listen and know that everything she's saying right now is a lie. So it will put you in a position of picking and choosing your battles. But for them, they view this as just a way to stay independent, a way to avoid intimacy. They don't want to text you and say, game night got canceled, so I'm going to go to a movie by myself, because they assume, remember, they already assume that you're going to have a problem with them wanting to do that. So they, in their head, will already have the conversation. In their mind, you've already told them, no, don't go to the movie by yourself. Let me come with you, or whatever it is. And so they come home, and to avoid the conflict that they think is going to come, they will tell you an imaginary story about game night, leaving you as the other person wondering, what other stories is she telling me that aren't true? Now, I'm using he and she because I'm a heterosexual male and I've only been in relationships with women, but I'm well aware that this goes both ways. So let's continue.
And the next one is a big one here. Avoidance of conflict. Avoidants, they don't like conflict. They would actually prefer to avoid conflict at all cost. And you can see how that can easily make a person lie about small details, big details, because they don't want the conflict. They don't want the consequences. They don't want to have to fight for an entire evening with their partner. They'd rather just not share whatever it is that they did that they know that the partner wouldn't like. But you can see how that can be very problematic, because distrust can be built in a relationship, because then maybe one time the partner finds out that the dismissive avoidant was lying about something, and then there's suddenly distrust in the relationship, and then the trust has to be rebuilt, and the avoidant is not going to be very proactive or good at rebuilding trust because they don't have a very high emotional intelligence. So it's quite problematic. But they really, really don't like conflict. And if you're with an avoidant partner, I'm sure you can recognize this. You've experienced this many times. They don't want to talk. Some of them even leave the room when a conversation starts, or when a conflict is about to build up, they'll just leave and you won't hear from them. They don't want to deal with it. It comes from being uncomfortable. They're incredibly uncomfortable with conflict. So they'll avoid it at all cost.
All right, these last 2 points, the avoiding conflict. The avoiding conflict will almost always lead to gaslighting. And again, this is one of those symptoms of where you would listen to some of the things that they're doing and say, well, that's a narcissist, but they're not doing it on purpose. They are going to be willing to avoid conflict at all costs. And when she says all costs, it's all costs. The dismissive avoidant, once they have made the decision that they are not going to tell you this, whatever this is, it could be the most innocent thing. Once they have made the decision that they are not going to share that with you, they will say and do anything, and I mean anything, to avoid having to tell you this thing. They will gaslight you. They will blame you. They will just bring out all of the stops. We'll go from anger to crying, back to anger, to gaslighting, to finally just asking you, why is this so important? All of that just to avoid the conflict of telling you whatever it is that they did. And you cannot get through to them, by the way. If you're going to try to use logic to say, we just had a 2-hour fight, a 2-hour conflict, because you're lying to me so that you could avoid the 2-minute conflict that we would have had you just told me the truth, it won't register with them. It is not about the conflict. And what I mean by that is that they're willing to go through any conflict if they can avoid exposing themselves for having done something that they think you might not approve of. Let's wrap that up again. They are willing to go through any conflict if it means that they can avoid the conflict of exposing themselves, having done something that they think you might have a problem with. So inevitably, you'll have this whole big blow up where they've gaslighted you and lied to you. And sometimes you'll find out the truth. Sometimes you won't, right? It gets very precarious and very exhausting for the other side of the story. Just like, just tell me you went to the movie by yourself. Why does it bother you? But remember, they have created a narrative in their mind, lacking evidence, that you're going to tell them no for everything. So they've already assumed, as soon as game night got canceled, that you're going to have a problem with them going to the movie with them by themselves. So unfortunately, these things that you've not seen, you have no idea these things have happened, those things have just built up in her head. And for her, or for them, if it's a man, for them, in their mind, you've told them no for this, for all of these things, and they never even asked you. They never even brought it up. But for them, in their reality, you've already told them no for so many things. Why bring up anything else?
And then to my last point here today in the video, they have low emotional intelligence. So for them, there's a lot of this emotions and communication, conversations, empathy. They don't really understand it. They don't really understand it. It's like a foreign language to them. They try their best, but at the end of the day, they're very uncomfortable in this setting. They're much more comfortable, for example, at work. Many of them are very, very successful because they're also super independent and they like to be independent. And being successful is some sort of a guarantee that you can take care of yourself financially, that you don't need anybody. It gives a sense of power, and also they're very comfortable. Very, very comfortable at work because you don't have to get too close to your colleagues. They'll always be at arm's length, but you can still have fun and communicate with people, and it doesn't get too deep.
The last thing is success at work. That is abundantly true. They do not have the capability, the capacity to have the deep, intimate relationships. So what they find at work is they're able to have the passing friendships. They can tell those people a little bit more about themselves. The friends don't care. Your friends are not going to care if you do A, B, or C because it doesn't affect their relationship. It doesn't affect their home life or anything like that. So they want that independence to only be intimate with people who don't care what they do or what they say. And you may also find that they will compare you to the people at work. Well, so-and-so doesn't care that I did this, or so-and-so's husband doesn't care. So you will find that you will be compared to these people, and they'll have a much better time dealing with the superficial relationships with the people at work than they ever will with you.
Again, mind you that being dismissive avoidant, it's kind of a spectrum. Some are very far up the end of extremities in terms of these things, and others, they just have a few of these symptoms. Some of them, it's not going to be that bad and it's going to be doable to be in a relationship with them. And then there are other dismissive avoidants who are simply so difficult to deal with that they are almost incapable of being in a relationship, long term at least. Avoidants also hide who they are as a way of protecting themselves. They don't like feeling judged. They can they have a very fragile ego often, and they can't bear getting judged. It is so uncomfortable for them. So that's another reason why they would hide aspects of themselves, especially the aspects of themselves that they themselves judge. The aspects of themselves that they feel are unworthy and not good enough, they're not going to show that to anyone. And it's fair enough. I think we all do that. We all kind of try to put our best foot forward when we're out and about and when we're meeting people. But it's kind of different with your spouse or your partner. You should feel safe enough, and you should be allowed to be your vulnerable self and even show your flaws.
Okay, so you've met somebody, and now, let's face it, in the beginning of a relationship, intimacy is not a huge issue, right? For the most part, we're not just like bleh, vomiting all of our past up on somebody in the first month or two that we meet them. So what will typically happen is you won't actually recognize somebody as a dismissive avoidant until comes the time about year 1.5, year 2, where it comes the time to really start sharing things. Remember, life is going to continue to bring them opportunities to behave in a different way than they have in the past. So inevitably, if you're in a relationship with them long enough, those opportunities for them to grow are going to end up affecting you. And by then, you're already in the relationship. Maybe you've moved in, maybe you've gotten married, maybe you've had a kid, whatever the case may be. So, a couple of the ways to tell right off the bat, how many exes do they have, and how many of those relationships ended chaotically versus how many of them are they still friends and cordial with? That is the number one way. Don't worry necessarily about the words that they use to describe how the relationship ended. You will mostly find that they seem to remember all of the bad things the other people did, but when it comes time for them to take accountability for the parts that they did, they will obviously, I can't say the word, they will hide it. They will say, I don't really know why I did that. I don't really know how I got into that situation. But they have a crystal clear vision and memory of what everybody else did. But if you're meeting someone and you would be relationship 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And they're not friends with any of their exes. All of the relationships ended very chaotically according to them. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, that's your biggest sign. Now, one of the things, especially men, now, and I guess women would probably do this. You guys can tell me. We all think we can be the one to fix them. I see what is going on inside of them. I see their true desire for intimacy, but I think that I can be the one to bring that out of them. No, you cannot. No, you will not. Okay? The only one that can fix the trauma that's going on inside of a dismissive avoidant is them themselves. And getting them to recognize and admit it is probably not something that you're going to want to take up trying to do. So if they have had multiple relationships, very chaotic endings, okay, that's your first sign that something might be off, especially if you start asking questions and they start telling you, well, this situation happened or this situation happened, whether it be with their parents. I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, parents, friends, co-workers, etc. If when they tell you a certain situation happened and you ask them, well, did you talk with your mother about that? And they say, well, no, I didn't really want to talk about it. Well, did you talk with your ex-husband about that? No, I didn't really want to talk about it. Well, did you talk with your son about that? No, I didn't really want to talk about it. What do you think they're going to do with you? Why? Don't fall for the trap. Don't fall for the trap that you are going to be that special person that's going to get them to finally open up and talk about these things. Because you won't. So those are two big ways. If they've had multiple chaotic relationship endings, and if inside of those relationships, when they say, well, this was the problem, when you ask them, Well, did you talk about it? And they're just no, 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 no. A few years later, you were going to be talking about how there was all these problems in your relationship with this person, and they were never willing to talk about it. You're not going to fix them. Now, another way that you can get an idea is, do they have any real long-term friendships? And who are they keeping around them in terms of their friendships now? And what I mean by that is, do they have a friend group that will hold them accountable? Or do they have a friend group that they can email and say, he did this or she did this, and the friend will just blanket believe it and be like, oh, they're a narcissist. They're a sociopath. Oh my God, it's so horrible that you're going through this. Or do the friends kind of hold them accountable? How do they react to their friends when the friend holds them accountable? How do they react to you if they tell you a story about something that happened with them in the past, with their mom, their parent, whatever it is? If they tell you a story about something that happened in the past, how do they react to you if you do not take their side 100%? Especially parents, because a lot of times with the dismissive avoidant, the original wound came from something that happened with the parents. So if they tell you my mom or dad did A, B, and C, and if you ask questions, it's like, well, why did you do that? Or why do you think they reacted that way? Or maybe they were just looking out for your best interests. If you do that and they get angry at you, run. Run. Absolutely run. Because eventually what's going to happen is they're going to end up comparing you. You're just like my mother. You're just like my father. Because the way that the dismissive avoidant works is that every request is interpreted as pressure and something that you're complaining about. The simplest requests. The simplest request. You would be amazed at the cartwheels that their brain does to interpret things as a negative. As an example, maybe you had great sex on Wednesday and you wake up Thursday morning and you say, oh, let's do that again. They will interpret that as you did not enjoy the sex on Wednesday, so therefore you must need it again on Thursday. And you won't even, they may verbally tell you that that's how they're interpreting things. They may flip back and forth. They may go through stages of telling you immediately how they feel about things. And then they also will go through stages of hiding it, where you say something and it's just like an innocuous comment and they interpret it some way and they'll hold on to it for weeks. And you don't even know. You don't even know that they're walking around mad, worried, concerned, feeling a certain way about some sentence that you said that had nothing to do with the way that they interpreted it. And then all of a sudden it comes out in an argument. So, especially family relationships, if you take anybody else's side in a conflict and it leads to anger, run. Now you done did it. Now you got into the relationship, you didn't realize, and 2 years in, you're like, oh geez, I'm in a relationship with the dismissive avoidant. They won't talk about anything. They won't talk about anything. Forget my feelings. You spend most of your time dodging bullets for them accusing you of things that you feel that are so far removed from reality that you don't understand how she got there or how he got there. So what can you do? Well, there's some things that you can do to make it easier on yourself, depending on your situation. If you find yourself married with kids and you want to stick it out and gut it out for the kids, you are going to have to decide just how much honesty or dishonesty you're willing to handle. Now, if you're fairly confident that they are not cheating on you, but they're still telling you little stories about game night that never existed, it is a tough road. Because when you accuse them, and I will say this up front, do not accuse them of lying about anything unless you have proof. Do not accuse them of lying about anything unless you have hardcore proof. Here's the emails. Here's the screenshot. Because otherwise, the depths and level of which they are willing to gaslight you, they will use your traumas against you. They will tell you that your parents said things about you. They will say anything to avoid exposing themselves for having been dishonest. So if you are as comfortable and confident as you can be that the lies and the deceits are not involving infidelity, then you can try to decide within yourself, can I live with this? Can I live like this? Can I live knowing that she's home all day by herself? I go to work, I come home, she tells me how her day went, and I don't know if it's true or not. Can you live like that? That's a toughie. Now, another thing that you are going to need to do is do not wear your emotions on your sleeve. It sucks. It's not an intimate relationship. But if you were stuck, again, kids, whatever, do not wear your emotions on your sleeve. Because she's already going to interpret every sigh that you have over the course of the day as something towards her. You could be in the middle of the most stressful day of your life. You got fired. Your dog died. The roof crashed in. And you could walk into the room and go, oh. And she will think, or he will think, that you're mad at her. And just ignore the firing, the dog dying, and the roof crashing in. They will interpret your heavy sigh as, oh, well, what did I do now? It's maddening. So you're going to have to find another outlet for your emotions. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do this. These are suggestions that if you were in a situation where I want to try to make this work, I have to try to make this work. Not everybody is in a position to just be like deuces. Okay, life is life. All right. So be as stoic and deer in the headlights and emotionally checked out as you possibly can when you were around them. It sucks. I know, especially if you're somebody who wants an intimate relationship and is used to that give and take. It's uncomfortable. But the more that you emote, every emotion is going to be interpreted by them as an attack, as a pressure, as something that they are doing wrong. And don't assume just because they put on a happy face and pretend for a few days that they're not inside themselves stewing over the fact that you got mad at them the other day and you don't even know why. And well, yeah, you don't know why I got mad at you because I wasn't mad at you. But when you tell them that leads to the next thing. Yes, they're going to misinterpret. They're going to misunderstand. They're going to get it wrong most of the time because their default position is you don't love them the way that you say you do. You're going to tell them no. You disapprove of them. That's their default position. So they are going to misunderstand and misinterpret 99% of your words and actions. Don't bother trying to explain it to them. Don't bother trying to, you misunderstood. That's not what I meant. Don't bother. Don't save yourself the trouble. I'm sorry you feel that way, and move on. Don't give them fuel. Do not give them fuel, because the bigger the trauma and conflict that they can cause within you, that somehow you are the problem, that somehow you are hiding your true feelings, the bigger the conflict that they can cause in you, the less likely they know that you are to try to dig into them and find out what's going on with them. Now, this sounds again like something a narcissist would do, but they're not doing it on purpose. It's weird. They are doing it on purpose to confuse you and gaslight you, but not because they want bad things for you. It's because they're trying to protect themselves. So it's very narcissistic symptoms, but again, the reason they're doing it is completely different. Okay, so now they finally dumped you, right? Most likely, a situation came up that would have required significant deep intimacy, right? You might find that a dismissive avoidant leaves you in your biggest hour of need because they just don't feel equipped. They know that they're not equipped to give you the emotional support that you're going to need in that moment. So now they're gone. And here's the advice that I can give you. First of all, you have to understand that they're going to speak in code. Now, you do have to make the decision. Do I never want them back, or could I possibly ever want them back? That's the decision you're going to have to make. But you're going to have to realize that they are going to speak in code. Okay? They are not going to text you, I love you, I miss you, I'm sorry. You ain't never getting that. They might be thinking it. They might be crying on their pillow at 2 a.m. because they miss you. And they might text you at 2 a.m, but it'll be, I can't find my TV. Do you still have it? They're talking in code. It's not about the TV. The sooner you figure that out, the easier your post relationship is going to go. Now, if you've decided that you no longer want them in your life, good luck. That's all I can say, because they still at their core want that intimacy. At their core, they still want that. And they are likely to relive the situation over and over again until or unless they meet somebody new. And an interesting thing that may happen while you're in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant is they will have realizations about their previous relationships while they are with you, because now it's safe for them. Now that they are with you and they are no longer with the other person can't judge them. So they are safe to say to you, well, I realized what I did with so-and-so because I did this and I did this and I did this. And you're going to be like, well, you're with me now. So, you're not going to have any real feeling about what they did to somebody else. So if you decided that you no longer want them in your life, it's going to take a minute. It is going to take a minute, because remember, they've done all this to protect themselves from having the intimacy that they so desire. I don't wish that on anybody. I would never wish it on anybody for them to want something so bad that they are so incapable of participating in. While inside their head, they know they're incapable of it, and they try every which way that they can. They may throw sex at you. They may throw money at you. They will throw acts of service at you, but they are not going to throw true intimacy at you ever, unless they get healed. Now, if you are on the side of, well, I'd still like to see if maybe I could make it work with this person, you are at the point where you have nothing to lose. Now, you could try the overt truth technique. You could say, well, I feel you did this, this, and this. The problem is going to be getting their attention. You could write them an email. They ain't going to read it. They're going to get 3 lines in, see what you're getting ready to say. Nope. You can send them a video. Same thing. They might listen to 2 minutes. They hear what they think you're getting ready to say. No. You might, hey, can we meet? Can we talk? And they will say, well, there's really no reason for us to meet or to talk and have a discussion because I don't really want to talk about it. They never really get the idea that there were 2 people in a relationship. And they will swing back and forth between telling you that it's over. They might tell you it's over. That's it. I never want to see you again. And then 3 weeks later, you have a conversation and they'll say, now I really don't want to see you ever again. And you're like, wait a minute. I thought that was 3 weeks ago. Make up your mind. it can be very difficult because they are going to speak in code. And what that code is that they left you because they know they cannot provide the true level of emotional intimacy that you deserve and that you desire and that they desire and deserve as well. It doesn't matter how hard you try to get them to see it. Now, you could suggest that they go get some kind of therapeutic help, but they likely will just throw something at your head when you suggest that. So what I can say is that post-relationship with the dismissive avoidant, if you are not careful, you can cause yourself more harm in the few months after the relationship is over than you did in however many years you were in the relationship. Because for you, the emotionally healthy one, I feel, okay, you know what? There's nothing to lose. They're gone. The relationship is over. There's nothing to lose. Why can we not just have a conversation just for closure? Just to say, hey, look, this is what I did. This is why I did it. Can I see this? Can I see that? Yes. They're not going to do that for you. Not anytime soon. You likely won't get that conversation with them until years later when they've gotten to another relationship and they're having intimacy problems in that relationship, and they start to recognize the patterns again, and they realize what they might have done with you. And then you might get an email or a phone call, be like, well, so I've been thinking maybe we could at least, have some closure here. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time. Now, I'm not saying they'll never get healed, and I'm not saying it depends on how much trauma you want to go through. And what I mean is that how many times you want to bang your head up against that wall? You already did it all that time in the relationship, right? You already banged your head up against the wall. How many countless of times trying to get them to just tell me the truth? Just tell me the truth. Why are you lying to me about game night? I know you didn't go to game night, but you better have proof. If you're going to tell them they didn't go to game night, you better have proof. And you still better be ready for 2 hours of yelling and screaming and gaslighting and crying and all of the things before they finally will look at the text from her sister that says, there's no game night. And then most likely they're still going to blame you for lying. They'll say that, well, you're so upset, that's why I can't tell you the truth. And that's the last thing. Post-relationship, they will blame you for their lying. It is a vicious cycle. They lie and they hide things. The person that they are with finds out and gets upset. And then the dismissive avoidant uses that as the excuse to, well, that's why I can't tell you the truth. They will use the person's reaction to being lied to as the reason why they can't tell them the truth. Because they'll say, well, look, you're so upset. We're not upset that you didn't go to game night. We're upset that you lied about it and told us a whole story. But they don't get it. And they never will, most likely with you. Most likely, the only way a dismissive avoidant is going to heal is once they have gone through enough self-inflicted wounds and they've gone through that cycle over and over and over again, where they finally can just if they're willing to stop seeking new relationships and take enough time within themselves, they might get there. They might get there. But the problem or the unfortunate issue is that the wound is not what happened in this relationship or that one or that one or that one or that one. The wound is all the way back at childhood. And sometimes people get to a certain age like, I don't care. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to go through that. And so they will either continue to create the same patterns in relationships, or they may finally accept that they're not compatible with having a relationship, at which point you get the dog or you get the cat and you move along your merry way. And hopefully you don't meet anybody else that you can traumatize and gaslight because you're protecting yourself from a wound that is something you don't want to deal with. So if you're in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant, I wish you the best of luck. If you'd like a personal coaching session with me, just to chat, email is in the description. It's justrealcoaching@gmail.com. If you meet somebody and your relationship number 5, and they had chaotic endings with all 4 that came behind you, don't say I didn't tell you. Don't say I didn't warn you, because when you come crying to me after relationship number 5, I'm going to say I told you. What? Okay? These aren't lessons from the throne. These are lessons I've learned. Let's just put it that way. All right? I say it with such surety because I've gone through it. I didn't read a book to learn this stuff. That said, appreciate everybody watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment to help the algorithm, please. Now we'll see you again soon.